Hey, welcome everyone to SolidWorks Live Design on this lovely, hopefully it's lovely where you're at Friday. Excited to kick this one off. If you're new to the channel here, SolidWorks Live Design is a series. It's dedicated to the pursuit of learning from one another using the medium of live SolidWorks CAD demos. Now, it's really all about diving in, especially this season, a deep dive into topics, specifically topics that are near and dear to our presenters' hearts. Something that they really excited to share with everyone on the call, everyone out there watching today. So I'm really excited to have my colleague Mark Peterson join us today to share some really cool topics on overall just workflows and efficiency and productivity inside of SolidWorks. What's up, Mark? How you doing?
Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
Not too bad.
Good.
Good to have you back. I heard you were overseas for a little bit.
I took a little trip to Europe. I went to Copenhagen and Lisbon and Brussels, and yeah, it was a nice little vacation. It was awesome.
I was going to ask you, did you have any food that you particularly wanted to share that stuck out to you?
You know, I'm a big fan of waffles. I don't know if you're familiar with waffles, but they're delicious. I have my own recipe that I make here at the house, but obviously when you're in the land of waffles, you have to check them out. So in Belgium, checked out some of the waffles. They did not disappoint. I would highly recommend it. It might even be worth just the flight itself. Maybe just fly over there real quick, grab a waffle, head back. So
what do you put on your waffles? Are you just a syrup guy or
nothing?
Just plain waffle?
The classic style is just maybe a little bit of powdered sugar. That's
man, I don't think I've ever had a waffle good enough
yeah
to stand on its own. That's amazing.
Yeah. But otherwise, like maybe some butter and maple syrup if you're really feeling yourself. But, typically I just go for like just the straight up waffle.
Nice, man. It sounds delicious. Well, I'm happy you're back. It's good to have you back. What are you planning to show us today? I gave a little preview, but I haven't seen any of this yet. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah. So I'm gonna show some productivity tips, and people might think different things when they think of productivity, but what I mean by that is in SolidWorks we do a lot of things over and over and over again, and it can be a bit monotonous. But if you remove like maybe a little bit of mouse movement from that, or one less click or something like that, that adds up a lot over time. So maybe you might think like, okay, like, instead of using the command manager to use all of my commands, maybe I'll use the mouse gesture wheel, for example. And that kind of keeps your mouse cursor closer to your design. So the next thing you're going to select is going to be that much closer to your mouse cursor. And again, that might not seem like, a giant revelation to any of our audience today, but when you add those things up over a day, over a week, over your career of using SolidWorks, that's a lot of productivity that you're going to capitalize on. My background is, I used SolidWorks for a while in medical devices and also in manufacturing. And then I worked for a reseller doing technical support, training, even doing demos to, sell SolidWorks to some of our clients out there. And in the experience of training people and doing tech support and that sort of thing, I found that, a lot of people were pretty inefficient with a lot of their SolidWorks mouse movements and stuff like that. So one of the things that I always really love doing is just showing people not just tips and tricks on how to be more productive in SolidWorks, but specifically tips and tricks around making the most out of each movement in SolidWorks. So for example, I would notice a lot of people use the mouse for everything, but the keyboard is by far the fastest input method. And so if you couple the mouse and the keyboard together, you're automatically going to increase your productivity by a lot. And especially if you know exactly where to keep your mouse hand and your keyboard hand. So for example, I always have my mouse hand on kind of the left side of my keyboard. So it's near the spacebar key, so I can easily access the views menu. It's near the S key for my shortcut command. It's near the control key or the shift key, so I can do multi-select options, that sort of thing. And of course, my right hand would be on the mouse. So
Mark,
these are.
Yeah. Do you do a quick hardware check? What do you use for keyboard mouse? Anything like a space mouse, or you stick with the standard?
I've used space mouse before. I have one. One of the things that happened a lot when I was working at the resellers, that I would constantly be going to like our clients and helping them with their tasks and stuff. And everybody has sort of a different setup. So so because of what I was doing personally, I just always felt like just try to keep everything in SolidWorks as default as possible and just use any kind of regular basic mouse. So my mouse that I use now is just the Logitech MX Master.
Boom, same
Nothing.
one.
You have the same one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
different color.
So
Yeah, I've got a.
it's a good mouse. I mean, there's certainly improvements that can be made with it and stuff, but there are better mice for sure. But this one's satisfactory for me. And then my keyboard is just a mechanical keyboard. I just like the feel of it, but it is a 10 key, so it does have the option for me to add, to type in. Here I can kind of show it a little bit. It's corded, so I can't show too much of it, but that's my keyboard there. So
Okay.
nice and clean, so another productivity tip: keep your keyboard clean. You don't want any grime in there. So but yeah, so that's, these are, I just, for the keyboard, just go with whatever you like best, whatever feels best. But I prefer mechanical keys because there's less strain on your hands a lot. And, I like the feedback of the mechanical keys. So
yeah, I just got a mechanical keyboard not too long ago because I travel between here and the office. It's a cheap little wireless one, and it drives my wife nuts. But I love the sound of the clackety clack clack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm finding that there's a whole world of mechanical keyboards out there that I have to explore. So
yeah, it'll really impress your friends. They'll think you're some kind of typing master, but really it's just the sound of the keyboard that's making it happen. So
I'm excited to see some software.
I got SolidWorks running here. I've loaded up our one of my favorite data sets we have, the Proteus data set. This is it's exercise equipment. This is a really, really cool product from our friends at Proteus, and they were generous to allow us to leverage their data set and use it to show them some things off. And a lot of things I'm going to be showing today don't necessarily have to be shown with this data set. Obviously, this is going to be universal for pretty much everybody out there. So, but I just like this data set a lot, and I'm really thankful for our friends at Proteus that allow us to use this. So,
yeah, before you dive in, I just want to remind the audience too, we are live. We're streaming live. Mark, you're down in Texas. I think you're in Texas. I'm in Minneapolis. And you guys are coming from all over the world. So use that chat, throw questions in there. If you have feedback or something else you want to share for the audience, that's what we're here for, is to share, learn together. So feel free to engage as much as you like, and we'll try to answer those questions as they come along. All right. Cool. Sorry for the interruption, Mark. I'll let you jump back into it.
No, that's great. And yeah, I mean, I think we have about 50 minutes, so I have a lot of things that I could show, and we're just going to go through, I guess, as much as we possibly can. But generally, what I'm going to be showing today, there's going to be a lot of things that probably our audience has seen before. These are productivity tips that you may or may have not seen in the past. But I'm going to especially highlight some of the newer productivity enhancements that we've seen in the last few functional deliveries, or FDs. And 2015 is, or sorry, 2015, 2025 is absolutely full of them. So there's going to be a lot of really cool things that I'm going to show today, including some AI stuff. So I mean, definitely stick around for some of that. It'll be kind of maybe more near the end. But let's get started with not assemblies, not large design review mode, which is what I'm in now. But let's just get started with sketching. Every design in SolidWorks starts with a sketch almost every time. And so if we're really focused on productivity and being better at SolidWorks, sketching is a great place to focus. So we'll start with that. I'm going to start by creating a new document. And here's my first productivity tip. If you're using this user interface, please stop using this. This was productivity tip number one. This kind of sinks your productivity by a lot, because really, if you want to have full control of your productivity in SolidWorks, you need to start using templates. And this is maybe something we'll get into if we have time, maybe at the end. But I'm just going to click on advanced, and you can see here that I have lots of different tabs here with lots of different templates in there. And these templates are useful because you can store things in there. Like, so for example, I have a template here where it's for parts, it's set up for millimeters, it's set up for ANSI standard, and it even applies aluminum 6061 as a material to this part. So there's a lot of shortcuts that you can do with these templates, where if you're just using the same sort of configuration for every part that you set up, or you have like materials that you want to apply to it or something like that. Or if you want to have things like where your planes are shown or their planes are not shown, all of those sorts of things, the document standards, they all store inside that template. So if you notice that like as you're starting a new part, you're changing units, you're going and adding this, adding that, store all of that stuff inside a template and then use it. That would be that would be my number one.
I think that's a really good tip that to remind, like those templates. When I learned about templates, I always just thought it was for your units and your precision, right? That's like what you would set a template, but then you would start off. And then I was at a user group meeting and someone showed that they had like the weldments feature stored into a template, and then they had a start part, and they started like, oh, you can save other things to a template. Of course you can. That makes sense. It's brilliant. That's awesome.
So and each one of these selections, if you're going here doing a selection like that, going to options, doing document properties, changing your units to 2 decimal places, all this sort of stuff, that's a lot of setup that you're missing out on. Go ahead and just from here, just go to File, Save. Now I'm using 3D Experience SolidWorks, so a few of the UI elements might look a little bit different. But in the dropdown, choose part template or assembly template or drawing template, depending on what you're doing. And you can see here the file extension is .prtdot. So you can save that as a template and then go from there. So that's what I would recommend, step number 1. So,
Mark, what about companies who collaborate? Is there a way or recommendation for sharing those templates?
Yeah, those templates can absolutely be shared. And in the past, for my companies, before 3D Experience existed, we would use like a shared location on the network drive or something like that. Of course, here in SolidWorks 3D Experience, you can save it as a template, and then this this can be saved to the platform, to the cloud, and everybody can take advantage of this as well. So if you're a CAD admin, this is especially helpful because you can get everybody started on the same template right off the bat. So nice. Great question. Yeah. Okay, so let's start sketching. We'll get into some tips here. One of the things that I made sure to always teach in every one of my training classes, and anywhere I saw this, was SolidWorks does a great job of providing cursor feedback. A lot of people aren't really focused on the cursor when they're doing things, but if I want to create a line, you'll notice that my cursor is now a pencil with a line. I'm going to try to zoom in on this. I know it doesn't quite work that well over stream to zoom, but you can see it's a pencil with a line. If I turn that off, it's just an arrow. If I turn it back on, it's a cursor with a line. Notice as I hover over the origin, I'm getting this yellow box, and this yellow box has an icon in there. That icon means coincident. You'll get used to these icons as you become more familiar with SolidWorks. I'm sure many in our audience are familiar with this, but that yellow color is actually really important. That yellow means that you're going to create a relation here, and relations are important to create relationships between entities. So the end of a line and a point, you can create coincidence here. That means that point will be stuck there on the origin if I click. Back to cursor feedback, we can see that the line length is shown here. I would completely ignore the line length, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But you'll also notice that as you kind of spin around the origin here, you'll have different icons. So here you have an angle. This is sort of like a 45-degree angle thing. That box is white. Okay, so that means it won't create any sort of relationship. But here, if I go vertical to the origin, I have a vertical relation sign with a yellow box. That means it's going to create that vertical relation. And now you can see, as I zoom in again, that I've automatically created a vertical and a coincident relationship here that are shown up on my sketch. So being intentional with your clicks and watching for those relations is going to help you get through these designs faster, because if you don't do that, you're going to have to go in there and create those relations yourself. We do want to fully define all of our sketches. This is a parametric tool after all. We are designing for manufacture. So, these relations are important. They're not something that should just be ignored or not done at all. If I want to create a 45-degree, I can do that. Notice when I create a line that's kind of off at an angle, I now have these yellow lines here, these kind of yellow dotted lines in the background. I can snap to those for collinear and perpendicular relationships. Let's just make like a quick house shape here. So again, if I come straight down, you'll notice I can create that vertical relationship. Notice that the blue inference lines will sort of show up when I'm sort of horizontal to the origin. Okay. Again, looking at that cursor feedback, I'll just zoom in a little bit here again. You can see that I now have a vertical with a yellow box and a horizontal with a white box. So what that's telling me is that if I click here, I'll create that vertical relationship for the line I'm creating now. It won't create a horizontal relationship, of course, because that wouldn't make any sense, but I am actually horizontal to the origin, which means if I wanted to go horizontal right back to the origin, I could click here, and then I can go right back over to the origin, and now I'm horizontal to that, click once more, and now I've created a perfect house shape with coincident, vertical, perpendicular, and horizontal relations, just like that. So this cursor feedback is critical, and it's something that you really want to pay attention to when you're defining your sketches and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really that's a powerful tip. And I think that last example of one yellow, one white side by side. And as Eric points out, if you aren't watching your cursor tip, you're missing half the action.
Yeah.
So paying attention to that is going to better help you understand how the sketch is going to behave, how you might over define it. Because like what happens with, you've got dimensions to add too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into dimensions.
Oh, all right. Good idea.
And I always like to do it that way, like relations first and then dimensions typically. And I start with the largest dimensions first and go to the smallest. That's kind of my workflow for sketches. If you follow that, again, you're going to find yourself being much more productive in sketching. But right before we move on to dimensions, just think about what you would have to do if you weren't following that cursor. You would have to go back in, select each item, and then even though we have a context sensitive box here, so it's not too far away from your cursor, you still have to select multiple times and click on multiple things just to get these relations in here. So it's something that requires like a little bit of practice and forethought, but you'll get it over time. Now, let's add some dimensions. The reason I said don't worry about the exact size of your lines is because it really doesn't matter on your first sketch. Because when you add your first dimension, so I'll use my smart dimension tool here, let's say, and I'll select this line here, doesn't matter what it is. And let's say this is going to be, it's 1.8 inches in length right now. But let's say I need it to be 10 times that size. Let's just say 20. Notice what happens when I hit enter here. Nothing happened. So SolidWorks just scaled that first sketch to whatever dimension. It could be larger, it could be smaller. So it really doesn't matter what the exact dimensions of the lines are. What you want to do is you just want to make the shape about what it's supposed to be, and then let SolidWorks figure out how to scale it for you, which it does automatically. So now I will point out that when I went to create the dimension, I went to my command manager, I clicked on smart dimension, selected the line, that sort of thing. You don't have to do that. We have lots of shortcuts for this. There are keyboard shortcuts. So for example, for the line tool, if you hover over the line tool, you can see there's a keyboard shortcut there. In parentheses, it's L, for where's other ones? There's no other ones here. But anyways, so you have keyboard shortcuts shown up there. For Smart Dimension, you don't have that, but we have things like the mouse gesture wheel that you can use where you just click and hold the right mouse button and just kind of wiggle it around. And you can swipe through any command to start adding dimensions. We also have the S key, which has that there. But I'm not using any of those anymore because now I'm using Preview Dimension. And let me just show you what Preview Dimension looks like. If I just select a line, I now have a preview. This is brand new. I now have a preview dimension here that I can simply select. And I can make this whatever I want. I can make that 17 or whatever I want it to be. So I no longer even need to turn on the Smart Dimension tool or anything like that. Just simply select a line. Now, if I want to, say, add an angle, you might think, oh, okay, well, that's two things I have to select. So maybe I do need to go to the Smart Dimension tool. But it's not true. You can just simply select one line, hold the control key down with my left hand, and select the other line. And now I can create an angle here And I can say I want this to be 30 degrees or something like that. Let me just control select these two. I noticed that there was no relation created between these. That's okay. I can make those horizontal. And if I want to center this up, usually I like to use things like center lines, where I click and drag a center line between those two things. This is another mechanic that I like to show, which is that if you just want to create one line in SolidWorks, the line tool works like this. You click, 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 click. But if you want to create just one line, you can do that by just clicking and dragging and letting go. So that really helps out a lot when you're just trying to create one line versus many. Also, if you're in the click, click mechanic and you are done creating this set of lines, but want to create another one, you shouldn't hit escape. You should actually just double click. And you'll still be in the line command, but now you're no longer attached to that previous line. And then you can go here, double click.
Cool. So click, click, click to draw a continuous line.
Yep.
Click, drag to draw a single line, or whenever you want to stop drawing your line, double click.
That's right. And that doesn't work just for the line tool. So for example, if I want to do a spline, here's my spline, double click, done. Do another spline, double click, done. So it's very handy to be able to use that when you want to create groups of lines and that sort of thing. So
Eric had a good tip too, as well, with the couple the cursor tip with A on your keyboard to access the sketch tool options to go from line to like an arc.
That's right. Yeah, that's actually a really good one. So let's say for here, I'll just get rid of this. Let's say with my line commands, I want to create like a door with an arc on top of it. Normally you could create that. You come in here and grab a circle, hover over this edge. Now you have the midpoint. You can select this one. Again, looking at the cursor feedback, maybe grab your trim tool, power trim it out. It's a decent amount of work. So let's try it a different way. Yep. Okay. We'll get rid of you. There's to do. Don't ask again. So here's a great way to do that instead, to make it sort of tombstone shape. I could start with a line, come back to this endpoint, and now I have a arc.
Oh, nice.
Come back down. So that works really well. Another way you can do that is sometimes it's a bit of a struggle to come back to that endpoint and come back out. Sometimes it's just a little finicky. So I use the A key on my keyboard, and that will, change the line from a line to an arc.
Okay.
It's easy to remember because A is, it was like arc starts with A, I guess, but it doesn't just work for lines. So it actually works. I'm going to double click to get out of that. Let's say we have my rectangle tool out. I want to create a rectangle. Well, this is a corner rectangle. That's fine. But if I notice over here on the left-hand side in my property manager, if I hit the A key several times, it cycles between the different rectangle options. So instead of thinking A for arc, I usually think A for, let's say, alternate. So it's going to alternate the rectangle type for me until I get to the one that I want. So there's another good tip there.
That's a really good tip. I always seem to change my preference on rectangle styles. I guess it depends on the context of what you're sketching, and it's never the right one. Center point rectangle or corner rectangle or 3-point rectangle.
Yeah, because normally what you're doing is you're using this drop down and selecting whichever one you want to use. But if you have a keyboard shortcut, let's say it's for your rectangle tool, it's easier to just hit your keyboard shortcut with your left hand and then cycle through A. Again, the keyboard is the fastest input method. So as you become more familiar with your keyboard shortcuts, and cycling through the different options, you're going to be much faster at SolidWorks. Here's another tip that I always like to bring this one up just because it's usually pretty helpful. If I want to dimension this arc, if you select on it, it's going to dimension to the center point of it, which is usually what people want to do. But maybe you want to dimension to the extent of it, to like the maximum. You can get to that through leaders. And then at the bottom, you can choose whether it's the minimum condition or the maximum condition here. And that's fine. Again, this is like productivity tips, not just like tips on how to dimension things in SolidWorks. So if you are doing this kind of thing, instead of doing all those clicks, go and use Smart Dimension. But if you hold the Shift key down, notice you'll be able to get to the exterior of that arc, and you can drop it in place just like that. So that's a quick tip there for selecting things. So you'll notice that shift is really helpful in a lot of ways when you're doing things like sketching, or even in assemblies, like when you want to select through not select through transparent materials. You can use the shift key to select like the closest face to you, even if it's transparent or translucent. So that shift
Mark,
key
I
is
think
a big one.
in general, regardless of what software you're using,
Mm-hmm.
I always think it's really helpful. And you just pointed it out. You went to another tab on the line tool or the dimension tool, right? How often are you using that tool, and how many users may have never explored what we call the property manager? So no matter if it's SolidWorks or it's a Microsoft product or an Adobe product, figure out the tools that you use often and then explore the options within those tools. I think you'll be surprised to learn that there's a lot of different ways to approach it. So yeah, it's a good example. A lot of
really good example.
Second tab. So cool.
One more sketch thing I want to show, just because this is also brand new, and it's blowing my mind here, Mike. I don't know if it's going to blow yours, but here's another shift key option. I've got the corner rectangle tool out. This is how corner rectangle behaves. But check this out. When I use the shift key and hold it down, look what I have here. Brand new in SolidWorks.
An equal-sided rectangle.
Equal-sided rectangle. That's right. That's right. Look at that. It's a thing of beauty. Look, I've got equal relation here between the two sides. So it makes it easy to use my preview dimension here. Oh, by the way, that can be turned off and on. Here's the toggle for it. Preview sketch dimension. So if you don't want to see that, and you don't like it, you can always turn it off.
And that was new, fairly recent as well. The preview sketch dimension. Yeah.
I don't remember
24.
Exactly. I should remember exactly when it was, but I forgot.
So a little side note for the audience. So Mark and I work on the same team, and we spend a lot of time researching the new enhancements coming out. The equal-sided rectangle was spec'd, I think, last year. And we just kind of always laugh at the fact that it's called an equal-sided rectangle because it's a square. But it is a really good productivity enhancement. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, why hasn't this been here the whole time? I love it.
Yeah.
It's
like when we want to embellish a job title, and it's like, it's like, well, it's a square. No, well, it's an equal-sided rectangle. I'm sure the benefit, in the name. So.
That's great.
Okay, so that's a lot of sketching stuff. It is, but yeah, to Noah's point, thanks, Noah. Yeah, it is a time saver for sure. So if you're going to be creating a square, throw that in there. It's automatically going to add those relations here for you. So it falls in line with our productivity tips for sure. So, okay, so let's check out some other things. So let's say we're done with our sketching here. If you're new to SolidWorks, I'm gonna get into some things that are related more around the user experience. So one of the things that's also new to SolidWorks that I like to point out is if you're kind of new to SolidWorks and and it would make sense for you to watch this stream because you do want to improve in your speed and productivity in SolidWorks. One of the things I would recommend is simplifying your user interface. So right now you can see with my user interface, there's kind of a lot going on. And again, if you're new, you don't know what probably any of these icons mean. You got icons here, you got all these tabs here, you've got all this stuff up here, you've got these tabs over here, you got these tabs over here. There's a lot going on. It's not even counting the stuff in the bottom of the screen and that sort of thing. So I would highly recommend starting with sort of a simplified interface. SolidWorks now makes it easy for you to do that by just going to the View menu, and under Workspace, here's an option for Simplified Interface. Clicking on that just reduces the interface. It gives you one tab. It removes some icons from around the screen here, just in a few different places. It's not, it doesn't remove everything because some things are essential. You do need to actually have some of the user interface to do SolidWorks work. So, but as you can see, the basic modeling tools, you have a couple of sketch options here. You have extrude, you have pattern, just a few things like that. And this, again, this is not, you can still customize it. So, if you do want to have, if you do sheet metal and you want to have your sheet metal tab there, you can add that if you want. It doesn't stop you from customizing it further, adding or removing icons. SolidWorks is still very, very customizable in every aspect. Even things that you would think is not customizable, like this context menu here, where you can customize this and just add whatever icons you want in here. So like, for example, extrude. So you can just search for icons, just add them in here. Maybe you want extrude and cut extrude to always show up on this menu. Boom, there you go. You can add extrude right there, boom.
Mark, you mentioned this is a pretty new enhancement. So if you're out there and you're like, wow, we've got some interns coming in, or, or teach someone new SolidWorks. I think it was 2025.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Like FT SPO 2, right around there, that this was introduced.
Yeah.
So if you're on 24 or earlier, you won't see the simplified interface. But yeah, it's a great enhancement. I actually started using it more and more, finding that I really like it for a lot of the basic stuff that I have to do. So yeah, it's a good one.
It's and this is something we should point out to a lot of the audience, is that a lot of these, a lot of the new things I'm showing are 2025, whether that's 2025 GA, the primary release, or one of the functional deliveries, 1, 2, or 3. We now are actually improving SolidWorks, not just in bug fixes and speed enhancement, stuff like that. In the functional deliveries, we're now putting out actual enhancements, new features in these functional deliveries. So depending on which functional delivery you're on, you may or may not see some of these enhancements. So it's important to see if you can always upgrade to the latest as much as you possibly can, because you're going to take advantage of some of the new features that are coming out, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. And for the audience out there that's been using SolidWorks for a while, Mark's saying functional deliveries, or FD. It's just our new nomenclature to align with the rest of the products Dassault System has, because we have a very large portfolio. So that's just SP. We just now call it FD. Yeah, so that's right.
So let's talk about some other user experience stuff here. So I did talk about, I'm talking about sort of customizing things. Let's go into the customize. I just like to right click on my toolbar at the top, go to customize. Let's get into the keyboard. I talk about the keyboard a lot. I use it a lot. And I want to show how customizable the keyboard is. Let's say I want to be able to use zoom to fit. Zoom to fit has a keyboard shortcut. It's F. We use that all the time. I love zoom to fit. That's a good one. But what about zoom to area? I like to use zoom to area a lot. So let's say I want to create a keyboard shortcut for this so I can zoom in to a specific area. Let's just search for our command, zoom. So we have zoom to fit, we have zoom to area. You'll notice there's no shortcut for it. So let's select in this box, and let's say I want to use the shortcut A. Okay. Well, that key is already assigned. We just talked about that earlier, right? That's the one that allows us to toggle, in our property manager commands. So do we really want to change the assignment of that? If I say yes, I don't know if that's the right choice. In fact, I would highly recommend not doing that, because like I was kind of saying, my past experience, it was always helpful for me to really understand the setup, the default setup of SolidWorks shortcuts and stuff like that, as I'm going to other people's environments and helping them with their SolidWorks. It was nice to always be able to count on some of those shortcuts and stuff being there. When you would change it, it's like, well, there used to be a shortcut. Or let's say you're getting tech support and they're asking you, okay, hit this key or hit this key. And you're like, well, it doesn't do what you're saying it does. Well, it might be because you accidentally overrided it or something like that. So I usually like to keep the SolidWorks keyboard shortcuts as is if I can. So I'll just say no here. Now, something you can do is you can use modifiers for this. So let's say I want to use Shift A. So Shift A is a good one. You could use Control A, but a lot of times that's used in Windows for Select All or something like that. So instead, I'll use, let's say, Shift A, and I'll go with that. So now I can say Shift A. Now my cursor changes to that zoom to area, and I can easily kind of zoom into that area and get out of there. Now, recently, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, that's a good one. I think mine is Shift Z. Just don't ever do it as like Control S or Shift.
Control S, yeah. But yeah, that's like save, stuff like that. So I try to leave those alone. Now, here's something that I think is really cool. If we go back to our customize, this is new as well. Let's go to our keyboard shortcut. Let's say you know, for the export command, you know, I want to save something out as like an STL or something like that. Okay, so export, you know, it doesn't have any kind of shortcut. I could do a shortcut, you know, Control E or something like that. That would be fine. But we also now have search terms for this. So let's say I do export or STL or something like that, right? Like let's just say, you know, I just put whatever search term commands I want in there and say, okay, so now where do I search for it? Well, of course, I'm going to use my left hand on my keyboard and hit the S key, my favorite shortcut key in the world. So we've got S key. And I can search for commands. So of course I can search for zoom, just like I saw before, but I can also search for export. And that's going to show up because it's in the name, but let's look at STL. Export is there as well. So you'll notice that now I can you know, use whatever search command I want, as long as if that works for me and like my brain, then that's what I'll use. And if I want to find where that command is, of course, I can hit that little eyeball and it's going to show me with a big red arrow exactly where that thing is. So there we go. So highly recommend checking out those keyboard shortcuts, setting those up for yourself, and especially for the search commands. Again, the S key and then just start typing for a command is a great way to keep your mouse cursor closer to the work and keep you designing faster. So, and
yeah, the search terms is a really cool enhancement. You know, I think that's something that I learned about and started to use right away because there's a couple commands that I could never find. And yeah, so make that customization. And real quick, I just want to remind the audience that we're taking live questions. Eric, I appreciate you trying to stir some conversation up in there. So if you're out watching and you have something to share or you have a question for Mark, now's the time. We've got another about 22 minutes left. So we're happy to take questions as we go along. All right, Mark, back to you.
Thanks. Yeah. So, and with these, you know, if you'll notice there's a plus command here. So like, let's say for pattern, if you use like linear pattern a lot, go ahead and hit the plus key, add it to your shortcut command. You have it right there. Right. So this to me is a great way to work. Keeps all of your most used tools right there at your fingertips, along with the search command, which allows you to access some of the lesser known tools. One final one for user experience I want to talk about is the D key. So let's say for, you know, I have my Proteus open here. If I select this item, you know, you'll notice that in the top left corner, there's these breadcrumbs here. And these breadcrumbs help me select different aspects of, you know, of this. So let's say I want to open up this subassembly. So I'll select this item. And if I hit my D key, that'll bring those breadcrumbs to my cursor, where I can easily select those, right click, let's say open them. So I'm just going to open these, and I'm working in large design review mode, but I will load this up in like, let's say lightweight here in just a second. So I'm just going to set this to resolved real quick. Bear with me, because this is actually really, really handy for a lot of different reasons. So come on.
Hey, Mark, while you're letting that load, and you may show this, I don't want to jump into you, but the D key I discovered as well for sketching. If you're in an active sketch and you hit D, or if you're in a feature like a boss, right, and you hit D, you're going to be able to just okay, you hit that tick mark to get out of that command and move on. So
yeah, exactly. So it'll bring those breadcrumbs to your cursor, but it also bring the confirmation corner, these two icons, to your cursor as well, allowing you to either exit without saving changes or accept the changes and exit, which is really helpful.
Yeah, earlier you're talking about, like, you know, productivity, right? And there's actually companies that will measure mouse movement in a software to find more efficient ways, and web design and so on. And that's one to me that when it came out, I was like, this is where it's at. D key, I think, is greater than the S key when it comes to productivity.
Also, another use of this is, notice confirmation corner is a little busy over there. Notice now I have access to all my mates and that sort of thing, as well as I can dive into this and select the boss extrude or even just that face that I was selecting. So this is really useful all over the place for selecting all kinds of different stuff. So, okay, we've only got 20 minutes. I mean, there's so much to get into. Let's get into some parts real quick. So let's talk about, I've got an idea. Let's go here. Something I don't know if this is like necessarily a productivity thing, but I really like this feature. And I like to show it just about as many times as I can. Now, in this particular component, we have a hole here, and it's got cosmetic threads on it. And that's great. That's exactly how we want to design in SolidWorks. Cutting physical threads in SolidWorks is usually not something we recommend doing. But let's say you did want to create a prototype of this or 3D print of this or something like that, and you do need to actually create 3D threads here. So in the past, what you would have to do is you'd have to do, like, let's say, reference geometry, and create like a helix and, do all this sort of stuff. Well, that's not the case in SolidWorks anymore. Let me just change my view here to, since we're getting just a little bit more advanced stuff, I'm going to go back to my workspace, turn off my simplified interface. So I could do reference geometry and, curves. That's where I'm at. Yeah, curves, helix, and spiral. Select this. Okay, now we're creating a circle. We can just select that edge, convert the entities, confirm that. Cool. And now we have our helix spiral. So we'd want to reverse the direction. We want to increase the revolutions, decrease the pitch, that sort of thing. So, you'd be creating this stuff. Got your helix spiral. Okay. And then let me just hide this real quick, just to make it a little easier to see. And then after this, you need to create a plane that you can sketch your profile on. But, this is an angled line, and, it's a little challenging. So, how would you do that? Well, you could select, let's say, the endpoint here, control select the spiral, go to reference geometry, create plane. Now you're creating a plane that's perpendicular or normal to that helix at that point. So you've got that. Now you're selecting this plane, you're creating a sketch. So as you can see, there's a lot of steps to this. And this is not new. I mean, we've been doing this for a while, but let's just hide these, and let's get into the better way to do this, which is underneath our hole wizard tool, which was used to create this hole, which is typically recommended. But again, if you're creating a 3D print of this or something like that, you may actually want to cut some threads. So we're going to use the thread tool for this. It's going to give us a warning about how these thread profiles are nominal. So make sure that they match up with exactly what you expect. And then here you can just choose the thread location. So we're going to choose that edge again. Very good. And we can choose if we want this to be a die or a tap type thread. So whether these are extruded threads or if they're cut into the component. And then we need to just choose the size. So it's going to be, these are half-inch threads there, or half-inch diameter hole. Cut the thread and confirm that. So then it'll just go through and cut our threads for us. Boom. So now we have physical threads in there, which is pretty cool. So,
nice.
If you are doing something like this, nice productivity tool is to, be able to create those threads on their own, right? So.
Now, why, you mentioned for prototyping, like 3D printing, excuse me, why, come on, why wouldn't you want to introduce a bunch of threads into an assembly? Is there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something else that's going to help us with productivity is really understanding our components and their performance. So under the evaluate tab, I like to go to performance evaluation. This works for parts and assemblies. And when you load up your performance evaluation, it's going to tell you some very interesting things about what's happening here. So let's zoom in on this so we can see it a little bit better. It's going to tell you the number of features you have, bodies, as well as graphics triangles and face count and rebuild time. So notice this is 1.5 seconds of rebuild time. So every time I do a Control B on my keyboard or try to rebuild my part, or after I get done, executing a command, it's going to go through all of my features and rebuild them. You'll notice that one thread right here that I just created is almost 10% of my rebuild time. That's a lot. So, and that's just one thread. That's not a bunch of threads. So that one thread takes up quite a bit of rebuild, and it's adding a lot of graphics triangles and stuff here. So now we can see that, the graphics triangle is 12,000 graphics triangles. So, and there are ways to get around this. Like if you really do need the thread, maybe you want to explore things like the freeze bar, for example. The freeze bar is just a bar that we can use to drag down from the top that will tell SOLIDWORKS, don't rebuild these items, just keep them frozen. You can access the freeze bar by going to your system options. It's right here under enable freeze bar. Of course, if you didn't know that, I would highly recommend just searching for it, freeze. And that will take you to that tab and highlight it for you. So, don't spend a bunch of time searching through system options, please. Just search for it and find it, click on it and say, okay. You'll notice we now have this yellow bar here. Any of the items that are above this are going to be locked. And that means that SOLIDWORKS will not force rebuild those. So your rebuilds will be much, much faster if you use the freeze bar.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah. But yeah, again, so just deleting that thread and then going back, let's rebuild. Going back to performance evaluation, we can see that the triangle count is now down to, 9,500, where it was, 3,000 more triangles than that. So it's just crazy. So, and our rebuild time is, well, it still says around the same, but I think that needs to be refreshed a couple times before it updates. But the idea is just be careful about, the complexity of your components. And yeah, again, make sure that you're only using like things like threads and that sort of thing when you absolutely need them. Otherwise, cosmetic threads are totally acceptable.
Yeah, because if that goes to the machining, right, they're not going to actually look at the model to see the thread. They'll look at the call out and machine it in. So
when you create a drawing from this, let's just create anything. You'll notice that it's going to put that stuff in there. Let's say we got our top view here. This is the view that you want. I mean, when you're communicating the design, you want to, this is the hole this is the tapped hole. There's no need to actually have physical threads here, because when you're communicating the design, this is kind of what you want to see on your drawing. And it's automatically there because SOLIDWORKS knows that you use the hole wizard for that. So,
yes.
Okay. So, I had a lot of things to go over in parts, like part reviewer, which is, where's part reviewers here? I'll just go over this quickly, but this is something where you can, if you're curious about like how somebody created a design, you can just kind of step through the part. And there we go.
Uh-oh, they're coming for you, Mark.
Uh-oh. Oh, can you hear that? There we go. Part reviewer lets you step through the design, see exactly how the part is coming together, created. For some reason, not working right now, but anyways, we'll just close that out. Something else you can do is something called arrow key navigation. So this is another way that you can do this. So again, I'm just going to search for it. Here's arrow key navigation. You can select this and say, okay. What this does is when you select your navigation or rollback bar here, you can use the up and down arrow keys to kind of step through your design. So again, if you're kind of opening up somebody else's design and a little bit curious about like how they created it or whatever, you can use that. So there's
it's a good one. Like finding design intent, even if it's your own design. I've had models I built years ago that I'd pull back up and it's not behaving when I make this dimension change how I'd expect. So the arrow key navigation, awesome way. Roll back and just go through and refresh. Oh, that's right. I did this, this, and this. You get a really good understanding of how it's built. So
yeah. All right, so we've got 10 minutes. I can't believe it. I'm not even halfway through this.
Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. It's good stuff. So I'm having to skip a few things, but it's okay. We're gonna keep moving on with it. Something I wanted to show really quickly, if you use bounding boxes, this is just another new thing that I really like and I think is kind of cool, is under features, reference geometry, bounding box. Now, generally with a bounding box, we're creating rectangular bounding boxes, but for, let's say, a cylindrical item like this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Usually this is not a great example, but we would turn this part, let's say if it had some grooves or something in it, we would turn it to cut those grooves. And a cylindrical stock makes a lot more sense for that. So here we have cylindrical bounding box, which is relatively new, which I like. So bounding box there, that's cool. Even better is that in the file properties, okay, your bounding box information shows up here in your properties too. So check that out. It's pretty cool stuff.
Now, why is that important?
The properties?
The bounding box.
Oh, the bounding box. So it tells you like what size stock that you might need to use for creating this component. And also, yeah, actually, great point. There's this folder over here, and I know there's a lot of stuff over here, but as you become more familiar with SolidWorks and trying to understand what's going on here, you'll start recognizing some things in the user interface, like why is that always there all the time? Like, what is this thing doing? You can create things like sensors, which are giving you feedback about your component, whether it's the mass or the volume of it or surface area or things like that. But you can also do things like bounding box properties. So for example, if the bounding box width or area or something like that becomes greater than a certain amount, then notify me. Like, oh, we only have stock that goes up to, an inch or an inch and a half. Like, so if I start making SolidWorks components that are higher than that, then I want to be alerted in my feature manager tree to let me know that I can't create this component without getting some new stock or something like that. Put this into your template and you've got yourself a real winner there. So
yeah, good. Okay. I mean, putting out sensors, they're awesome. I think it's one of those folders I looked at and never thought about, learn about them. They do a ton. So yeah, nice tip there.
Okay, let's keep her coming here. We've got some assembly stuff I want to get into really quickly. Now we have things like mating that I'm going to get into, but I want to show something brand new really quickly. And that's something we're using artificial intelligence to help us out with, which is adding components or adding hardware components to our assemblies. So I have, let's see, let me minimize this real quick. Oh, actually, you know what? Sorry, in parts real quick. One more thing for parts before I get too far ahead of myself. Look at this component. Okay, so I got this cool component here. This looks good. Now, this could be done with standard cuts and bosses, extrudes, stuff like that. It could also be done with surfacing. But one thing that is challenging with this in SolidWorks is that creating edits or making this a more ergonomic shape might not be super simple. And I also want to point out that although there's nothing wrong with this, when I turn on zebra stripes, you'll notice that on these filleted edges, there's sort of kind of these hard turns in my zebra stripes, which means that I don't have actual, what's it called, C3 curvature continuity happening here. So I want to show something real quick. If you're using 3D Experience SolidWorks, you do have access to something called 3D Sculptor. And let me just load it up here. Boom. Now, this is a really cool tool, which allows me to use sort of a virtual clay push and pull kind of stuff to create components. I was just messing with this earlier, and of course, it closed it out to save RAM for me, which is good. But notice with this one, if I go to Tools here, Zebra Stripes, notice in those same corners that these are nice and smooth, and they flow over that corner really nicely. This, if you're creating these types of shapes, this is the tool that you need to use for this. So not only that, but we can do things like draft analysis on this too. So let's say we have this plane here. We can see that it's coloring things that are green, which satisfy the draft conditions, or yellow, which don't. So maybe I want to change the shape. So I can just easily go in here, select maybe some of these edges, pull them out, as I need to, and I can create, more green space there. Something that's really cool is let's say I select these guys, and I want to kind of change this, manipulate it a little bit. Maybe I'd change it to something that looks like maybe like this, So I create like kind of a little bit of a different shape to it. That's just super easy in X shape. I don't have to go through and find the exact sketch and change the sketch and deal with fully defining and all this sort of stuff. I can just simply go for it. So that's just something I wanted to show quickly in parts.
Nice.
Okay, back to assemblies. I think I have time for just a couple quick ones here. Let's talk about adding hardware. So I have, let me move this over here. I don't know where it went. Okay, I have some hardware here. So let me show you this. So in my downloads, I just grabbed some stuff, let's say from McMaster car. Okay, so I have like this guy here. Maybe I want to drag and drop this guy in. Notice that now I can just simply snap that in there. This is not a, some kind of part that has, any sort of mate references or anything like that. It's just a bolt that I got from McMaster. As you can tell, it's got the threads and everything still on it. So easily throw that in there. Doesn't work for just those though. Like, so let's say for this one, I'm going to create a quick copy of that, drag and drop it.
Mark, how did you create that copy?
I held Control and dragged it and created a quick copy. Yeah. Another great productivity tip. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, you can click and drag those and just drop them in really quickly. It doesn't work for just hardware. I have this pin here, for example. Notice the cursor feedback is telling me this is the AI recognizing that as hardware, dropping it in there. Here's another one. This isn't necessarily a washer, just some sort of cover. Click and drag it over there. Pretty good stuff.
That's really cool. So this is 2025 FDO3 because you're using 3D Experience SolidWorks, so you got the latest version. Yes. So if you're in an earlier version, this is something to look forward to. Make a note, 2025 FDO3. When you do that upgrade, you're going to get this really awesome functionality of using AI to automatically mate, downloaded component, like just pulling off the internet and slapping them in. That's super cool.
I like using Toolbox. Toolbox is great, but sometimes it's not an option. Sometimes you don't have SolidWorks Professional. Maybe you have SolidWorks Standard. So we haven't even gone into like quick mating and stuff like that. Let's do that real quick. I just want to show some examples of this, but I'll say here. So I'm just creating some copies here. But let's say I want to align these two components. Instead of going to the mate command and then selecting mates and stuff like that through here, I'm sure most people are familiar with quick mates, which is just simply selecting, let's say this face, select that face, and now I have a context-sensitive toolbar that allows me to make those coincident, for example. So this is being really slow on me, but yeah, that's that. Let's do one other thing here. I know I only have a couple more minutes, but let's show some drawing productivity enhancements here too. So in SolidWorks, let's say I need to create drawings of these items. This is also new and something that you can access again if you have access to the 3D Experience platform, because we're using the AI technology in the platform to do this. But let's say I want to create a drawing for this component and let's say this assembly. In SolidWorks, I now have auto-generate drawing. Now, this is in beta, but I can use this. Let's say I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And I can start creating these drawings. So what it's going to do is it's going to go and leverage that AI technology to evaluate the component and drop it into my template of choice. So under my default templates, I have my drawing template here. So it's just going to use whichever one I've selected for that. So it's going to evaluate it. It's going to drop it in there. And it's going to add things in there for me, like section views. It's going to add things like whole call outs. It's going to add like GTOL maybe, things like that. So here we have that one done. I'll just go ahead and open it. And now we have our drawing. And, some things are kind of stacked on top of each other, which is fine. We can just simply move those things around a little bit. So let's grab the drawing view, move it down. Oh, sorry. There we go. Grab the drawing view. Oh, it's asking me to log into the platform, of course. But, this is, I wouldn't say.
It gets you, it gets you
a
good stride in the right direction, right?
But,
and I know that you like really hammered on this thing, and a few other colleagues from around the globe on the SolidWorks side have all been playing with this, trying to poke holes in it, really. And overall, the It's like, hey, this is solid. It gets you a good start, and no need is it like intended to completely replace detailing and drawing, right? You still need to go in and check it, move things around, get it looking good. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you have things like, okay, so we've got isometric view. We have, section views that are added. So this is a great place to start. Now, if you don't have 3D Experience SolidWorks, that's fine. You can still take advantage of something similar, like if we do file and then make drawing from assembly, for example. You can choose a template that has predefined views in it. So let's say this one that I have for drawings, and this will create, whichever predefined views that you have in there, and you can drag more views in.
Cool.
So this is a good place to start as well. But the auto-generate drawings with 3D Experience SolidWorks really take it to another level. And you can do that with many, many, many files all at once. And so that just really helps out a lot across the board. So, okay, Mike, I know we're at time. I think I hit a lot of the big ones that I wanted to go over. Maybe a couple more about just navigating an assembly, because these can take up quite a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to highlight this real quick, and then we'll.
Yeah, I think we can go a little long.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just a couple more. So here's I've been navigating this one in large design review mode because it's a large assembly. And one thing I really like about this is that if I want to open, let's say, the subassembly, I can choose to open either large design review or resolved, which is pretty good. So with this one, choose large design review or resolved. So it just helps navigating through large assemblies, makes it much easier. Now this one's resolved as well, but it's not actually resolved. And you'll notice that the icons, they all look similar, but I'm actually tricking you, Mike. They're not resolved at all. These have all actually loaded lightweight. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm taking advantage of something here in performance called assembly loading. And I have something called automatically optimized resolve mode, hide lightweight mode enabled. Now, the typical mode is manually manage resolve and lightweight modes. This is what SolidWorks has always had for a long time. And whenever you wanted to open something, let's say I use my R key. R key, there we go. It wants me to do this thing. Okay, there we go. You'll notice here that I have only the options for large design, review, and resolve. So lightweight mode is actually hidden throughout the user experience, but it actually is loading in lightweight. It has the benefits of loading in lightweight, but is actually in resolve mode. And anytime that I'm actually exploring components or expanding them, that's when SolidWorks actually resolves those components for me automatically in the background.
That's really awesome. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with these modes, lightweight, large design, and resolved, essentially, Mark, what is resolved? What I guess the biggest two, like resolved and lightweight and large design. How would you define those three?
Yeah. So resolved is just sort of like SolidWorks will load all of the data for everything right now. And that gives you the most functionality and flexibility because, you can go and you can see all of the features in the component. You can edit them. You can see the sketches, the dimensions. You have everything. However, that's a lot of data, and computer resources are limited. Not every computer is a supercomputer, so your GPU is limited, your RAM is limited, your CPU is limited. So that may not be the best mode for everyone. So lightweight mode was created, which allows you to load primary information and graphics information, like assembly structures and things like that, but not necessarily showing you every feature and every sketch and every dimension. So it just limits the amount of data that has to be loaded into your RAM and that your GPU has to crunch through. Now there are computers that are not made for CAD, but you may still want to load things on them. Let's say a conference room computer. So for computers like that, we may want to load it in large design review mode, which is very, very bare bones and really just loads, let's say, the graphic information. So it allows you to, view, spin, rotate, zoom in, but you're not really able to edit anything until you actually resolve the components. So I hope that explains
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that totally gets it. So then that new optimize mode that you pointed out really kind of takes away having to figure out which is best for you. It sounds like you just kind of turn it on and let SolidWorks do its thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Nice.
it loads it as lightweight. So it only loads what's actually necessary at the time. Because I mean, you're loading a large assembly. It's not like I'm going to go in and edit every component and I need to see every detail of every component. I'm probably just loading it for a to do a specific task or to edit a few components. Well, why not just load those components on demand as necessary? And so that's what this new mode does. So I highly recommend exploring this mode. It's going to make you way, way, way more productive. So.
Awesome.
Okay, I think that was like, there's tons and tons more, but at some point we have to stop, and we're almost 10 minutes over. So I'm gonna stop right there before I get too excited. I don't know if I saw any questions or anything from the audience, but happy to take those.
No, a lot of good comments. Eric, as always, we appreciate you joining the chat and throwing out obviously some fun humor. You had me giggling the whole time, as always. But yeah, no questions came in. I think one that did come up was just reinforcing that you can do helical threads in your design, but that's going to be generally intended for that prototyping, 3D printing type stage. Other than that, there really is no need to complicate the assembly. So I appreciate the comment there. Mark, this was awesome. I took a bunch of notes because I learned a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to review those with everyone. So big takeaways for me, just hit those on those, is like starting with relationships first, starting with large dimensions and going down. So define your relationships, right? Pay attention to the icon, the color of those relationships are created, yellow and white. They mean different things. So that's a really awesome tip. A for not arc, because that's what I always think, but for alternate. So that can be used as well as a hotkey when you're drawing to switch between the types of rectangles you might be creating. Also create that different, change from arc to line. Equal-sided rectangle. I love it.
Yep, love it.
As we mentioned earlier, use your thread wisely. There is ways that you can automate thread creation. Just know why and when you're using that. You mentioned, I don't know if it was on your script, but sensors. Explore sensors, get on the Googly and learn more about sensors, because there's a lot of applications for that is another one. And what we just finished up with, I think the optimized lightweight mode, or just understanding
Huge.
that, because we hear a lot about people struggling with performance in large assemblies. So just that simple system option could probably save you a lot of headaches, and even the large design review mode, which is even a more simplified version. So this was awesome, dude. I learned a ton. I think the consensus is that we have to have you back to continue on with the rest of your content. A wealth of knowledge, Mark. We can't thank you enough. Yeah, man, have a good weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
All right, everyone. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, the most functional way to say thank you to us, to SolidWorks, to wanting to see more, letting us know that you're wanting to see more, is just that simple like and subscribe to the channel. When we see those numbers go up, we know we're doing something right. Now, we're going to be back next month. We got a really awesome guest, Danny Lum, who you might know from his miniature 3D printed bowling lane that's been all over TikTok. It's been all over YouTube over recent months. It's going viral. He's actually coming here to do a live show with us to talk about it. And again, gives you an opportunity to shoot him questions, learn about the magic behind the mind when it comes to these projects. It's going to be a great episode. So make sure to, again, like and subscribe, and we'll tune in next month. We'll see everyone then. Thanks again. Have a good weekend.